I had an interview this morning, and before you ask, I don't know for sure if I'm going back into the corporate world. Okay. But I had an interview, and I think I said, circle back, loop back, and follow up, all in the same sentence. And after it left my face, I looked down at myself in Zoom, and I was like, you are so stupid. I just looked at myself in Zoom with this mortified look on my face of what have you done? Why are you speaking this way, you weirdo? Just speak normally. Why do corporations, why do we as professionals in corporate life speak this way? It is exhausting and embarrassing. I was so embarrassed, and I couldn't look up from looking at myself in Zoom to see what the reaction of the other person was, but I was like, my face is flushing. I'm embarrassed. I know what I did, and I'm just staring at my face in shame. So while I am, again, slowly dipping a toe back into corporate life, maybe exploring some opportunities, I am noticing that my corporate speak is rusty. I mean, clearly, from the example I gave you. And my tolerance for corporate speak is way down. I had to build up a tolerance over 13 years. And after taking 7 months off, I can't handle it. I'm on these calls and I'm just mortified at the words that we're just spitting back at each other. Why use 3 words when you can use 19 and 4 buzzwords? Am I right? In a previous episode, we talked about toxic CEOs. And we talked about equivocating language. This is what this person said, the CEO. Additionally, he said, it could be argued that having a full-time job and serving as a primary caregiver is neither fair to the employer nor fair to the children. I'm repeating it again because, it's just Looney Tunes. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, he clarified, but I do believe that only the rarest of full-time caregivers can also be productive and full-time employees at the same time. He proceeded to say he believed the data would support this in time, though he then noted that data can be warped and manipulated to prove any one particular point. Corporate speak is exhausting. That is all just corporate speak. This CEO just pushed corporate speak mode and just spoke in circles, in riddles. and everyone's just gonna be like, yep, he's a professional, so he needs to speak this way. It's exhausting to listen to, and it's exhausting to produce. This type of communication, I think, is a big reason why corporate life can be so soul-sucking. Soul-sucking. And after taking a break from it and getting back into it, I'm like, wow, no wonder we're burnt out. No wonder we don't know who we are. No wonder we have weird coworker dynamics and toxicity, because we're all speaking in riddles and rhymes and farcities. That's not a word. This type of communication, 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 40 plus hours a week, consuming and creating this corporate speak is exhausting and soul-sucking. And I am a former proprietor of corporate speak, okay? I work in strategy, marketing, and communications. So I'm, unfortunately, someone who has crafted a lot of corporate speak, a lot of comms. I've crafted a lot of departure comms, a lot of crisis comms, a lot of announcements, a lot of CEO all hands bullet points. So I wanted to spill the tea today. The tea behind corporate speak. What is the tea behind common corporate communications? Because there is tea. Behind those 19 buzzwords, things are happening. And they've sort of spoken in this weird roundabout way, trying to disguise it, but you kind of know. You kind of know what's happening. What is corporate speak? Corporations and organizations often have a distinct way of speaking that is characterized by weirdly formal language, ridiculous amounts of buzzwords, and a focus on spinning positive messaging. It's things like disruptive, transformational, touch base, loop back, follow up, stakeholder, ROI, game changer, bandwidth, streamline, leverage, double click. I bet some of you are like, I heard all of these in one sentence this morning. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. The person I spoke to in my interview, I'm sure, is thinking that right now. It's speaking in a way that we never speak outside of work because it's unnatural. It's super unnatural. I know that I've gotten home after a long work day, and my first conversation with my partner is in this weird business tone. I think we even got into a fight. Like I had just gotten off a stressful phone call, went straight into picking a fight with my husband, like we do. When we're stressed, we pick fights with the people who love us the most. And he was like, you're speaking to me the exact same way you spoke on the phone for that meeting. I was like, yeah, you're right. I read in an article that this is called garbage speak, which is 100% accurate. It's garbage. Garbage language permeates the way we think about our jobs and shapes our identities as workers. It is obvious that the point is concealment. But like, what are we all trying to hide? When you think about the way we speak and that it's kind of not direct and very passive and very roundabout and very fancy and very fluffy and very positive, what are we trying to hide by not speaking directly? So why do we do this? Why do we speak in corporate speak in our jobs? Even though we are all just regular humans, we have to put on this like professional image. We use corporate speak to maintain this image that we belong in this business setting. Using this kind of weirdly formal language and specific terminology helps us create an impression of expertise and competence. It gives us credibility and the perception of competence. Like, I belong here because of these words that I used. You can't deny my credibility and my intelligence because I used the word disrupt. But why is this necessary? Again, when we are all just regular humans, we like to avoid conflict. So we use corporate speak to mitigate controversy. So first we use it to kind of put on a professional image. And the next is to mitigate controversy. By using really carefully crafted language, we can navigate things like sensitive topics. We can address concerns. We can deliver bad news. We can present our perspective in a controlled manner. And it's weirdly passive aggressive, isn't it? And somehow makes us think that even though bad news delivered, it makes us think that bad news delivered in this way will somehow be consequence-free. It's somehow to avoid any conflict or bad feelings in a high-stakes environment. It's like beating around the bush and using a million words because you think that doing this when breaking up with someone will somehow turn out just fine, right? Like, have you ever broken up with someone and you're like, okay, and you just sort of like circle around the topic like 19 times and then you say it and you're like, why are you upset? I spoke in a calm way, a professional way. That's how we feel, I think, in the workplace, that even though we're delivering things like you're not getting the promotion, but you say it in a stupid way in corporate speak to somehow feel like this person no longer has the right to be upset about the news. We're trying to escape consequences of conflict that is 100% natural and 100% normal in life and in work. We also use corporate speak to influence and persuade. Like, he who holds the most buzzwords is right, so we must follow him. Certain buzzwords can evoke emotions, convey authority, or create a sense of urgency. In presentations, in meetings, in negotiations, Professionals can leverage these linguistic tools to make a persuasive impact. Again, because it makes you sound intelligent and it makes you sound like you know what you're doing. It makes you feel calm. It makes you sound confident. The last reason, which I had to reread a couple of times because I was like, damn. I got it from an article on Vulture called The Spread of Corporate Speak. The article talks about how we use this corporate speak language as a kind of make us feel better about our jobs. Damn. It reads, the language of self-empowerment, or corporate speak, hides a deeper anxiety about our relationship to work. A sense that what we're doing may actually be trivial. Oh my God, trivial. And the reward of free snacks for cultural fealty is not an exchange that benefits us. That none of this was worth going into student debt for. That we could be fired instantly for complaining on Slack about it when we adopt words that connect us to a larger project that simultaneously folds us into an institutional organism and insist on that institution's worthiness. It is easier to pretend that our jobs are more interesting than they are. Empowerment language is a self-marketing asset as much as anything else, a way of selling our jobs back to ourselves. I read this article and I couldn't help but think like, damn, why you gotta expose us like that? We use corporate speak as a way to make us feel better about the corporate hamster wheel because it is just a hamster wheel. Oh God. So again, we use corporate speak to give us the guise of professionalism, to escape consequences, to influence or persuade other people, and to make us feel better about the fact we have to work. So why is this so dangerous? Number one, it's not saying what we actually mean, which I'm sure, as most of you know, is not healthy. I mean, my therapist used to say this, especially for those of us that are highly codependent, which I am. I'm a highly codependent person, or I can be. I have the proclivity to be codependent. What do you want for lunch? Well, whatever sounds good to you. Well, when do you want to eat lunch? Okay, well, that sounds good, right? Like I'm constantly kind of asking other people what they want to do before I form my own opinion. So my therapist actually said, state your needs plainly. And now my husband and I use that all the time when we're kind of like beating around the bush of like, what do each other wants? Finally, we're like, speak plainly. State your needs plainly. Great. I want to eat Taco Bell at 12:30 p.m. See you then. Not saying what you mean is really, really, really dangerous because it's not speaking your truth. It's not speaking your truth. It's not having other people know where you stand. It's having people have to guess as to what you think or what you feel. And then you're kind of left all like pontificating on what's happening because no one's speaking plainly. Number two, it's passive aggressive and it's trying to avoid consequences that still end up happening. It's sort of wriggling out of accountability. Work is filled with controversy and disagreements and bad news and consequences. And I think this garbage language can be really gaslighting. It's like we're saying, this is really bad news, but because I gave it glitter unicorn language, you no longer have the right to feel badly. And I am not a villain. I remember learning how to deliver really tough feedback, which was hard. I remember the first time I did it, I was sweating. Like I had driplets of sweat like coming down my sideburns because I was like, how do I do this? Because my instinct was to wiggle out of accountability. My instinct was to not let this person tell me that I was being unfair or that I didn't set them up for success or that I didn't give them the tools that they need. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep you at arm's length so that I'm not affected by how this is affecting you, which is unfair because we're humans and I should understand that giving somebody bad news, like they're not getting a promotion, they're not getting a stock options, they're not getting a raise, is going to affect them. And as a human, should also affect me. Not that it's going to change my mind because I'm a manager and this is my responsibility, but that it is okay that made that person feel badly and it made me feel badly. Number 3, it oftentimes hides the truth or conceals important information. Why treat people this way? Why choose when to be transparent and when not to be transparent? By the way, I think this was like 10 years ago when all these companies started to add transparency to their company values, right? Can you think of one company that doesn't have transparency or radical candor as part of their values? Radical transparency, LOL. This usually means that leadership wants to say what they want to say without consequences and not share what they don't want to share. That's exactly what radical transparency means. It's very inconsistent. And it rarely ever means transparency for all things, right? As soon as you ask about why they're raising funds, you're not going to get a straightforward answer. When you ask, are you doing layoffs this year? You're not going to get a straightforward answer, right? Like that's not transparency. And number 4, honestly, corporate speak just takes too much time. When I said circle back, loop back, and follow up in the same sentence, I could have just said, we'll talk again, or see you next time, or I'm going to send you an email tonight, right? The point of these sort of phrases, these corporate speak phrases, is to fill space. No matter where I've worked, it has always been obvious that if everyone agreed to use language in the way that is normally used, which is to communicate, the workday would be 2 hours shorter, for sure. If we use this garbage language in our relationships, our best friends would actually slap us upside the head because it's fake. It's fake. It's fake. It's little lies. It's time consuming, and it's maddening. I'm going to go through some common communications, some common situations, some common corporate speak garbage language, because like we listed before, why it's used and why it's dangerous, there's something under the surface. There's something under this effort to conceal. Garbage language is meant to conceal. So let's talk about what they're often trying to hide. Let's talk about departure comms first. When an executive leaves a company, there is 110% tea. Always. When leadership leaves, there is generally tea. You get these emails, right? It's usually like an all@company.com, team@company.com. So-and-so is leaving to focus on family. They're on to their next adventure, and we wish them well. Here is the new interim reporting structure. Dan reports to Robert, Robert reports to Michael, Michael reports to Raquel. You know, like these emails. It's never mutual. Like, yeah, maybe it wasn't mutually exclusive, but it was instigated by one party. So even though these emails are like, we both came to this decision together, hardly ever. Rarely do I see someone who has reached the rank of executive level leave to focus on family. And yes, they're leaving the company and subsequently will spend more time with family. So it's like kind of a half-truth, right? But it's never like the driving force. Was the communication abrupt or not? Like, did a person leave and like the next morning you got an email? If it was abrupt, it likely means the employee's leaving. It likely means the executive was like, I'm out. And then the HR team was like scrambling to put together some communication about it. If it's not abrupt, it usually means that it was the company's choice and they're figuring out how best to manage and communicate it. One of the best departure comms I ever wrote, because again, I'm a proprietor of corporate speak, but I try in my corporate speak to at least be pretty, dare I say, candid, but pretty real, like just kind of speaking. So this comm I drafted for this executive leaving was like, reality is, this won't be the last job you have. This probably won't be the last job I have, but I hope this was a really great stepping stone for you. And we don't like to lose good people, but we're going to lose so-and-so, and we wish them well. And it was just real. It was like, we didn't want to lose this person, but this person chose to leave and we're going to miss them. And that's okay to say. It's not like all of your employers are going to be like, oh my God, we all need to quit now. That's not the case. Being a little bit truthful in your comms is 100% okay and acceptable, and is not going to create chaos and a mass exodus from your company. Executive departures are usually not nefarious. I've only seen one executive departure that was due to a scandal, and they still got a departure comm. They still got the, we wish so-and-so the best as they spend more time with their family. Usually it's just time to part ways. Either the executive is struggling in a toxic environment, or the exec isn't fitting in with the culture, or it's bad timing, or for performance reasons, like benign performance reasons. In startups especially, it is very normal. And I wish something we talked about more, that there are phases to startup growth. There are phases to company growth. And there's, different strokes for different folks. And sometimes it doesn't work out. I don't know why we expect these people to be with companies forever. That's just not how things work these days, because we don't get things like pension. Foreign concept there. Next, a CEO taking a step down. Oh, this is a juicy one. Someone debunk this for me. Okay, challenge me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there has ever been a CEO that just, quote, has had enough money and fame and influence and respect and power and wants to step down. I don't know. I mean, maybe Sarah Blakely with Spanx was kind of like, I did a great job. Now I'm going to do other things. Like, okay, maybe. But it's super rare. It's super rare. There have been some really great CEOs that I know of that have recognized that the demands of the company have outgrown their skill set. Because again, phases of companies, there's certain founders, certain CEOs, certain leadership teams that are good for point A to point B and point B to point C and point C to point D, right? And there have been some CEOs that have just known this and have enough self-awareness to leave. And they, along with the board, decide to part ways and hire like a professional CEO. But even the most self-aware CEO, the CEO with the most vulnerability and emotional intelligence, it never feels good to be told, you're no longer cutting it, Jen. Or you're no longer cutting it, John. I want to say John because women CEOs of S&P 500 companies finally outnumber those named John. The article literally says, female CEOs have widened the gap with a popular male CEO names. Progress. As I weep. But honestly, it's usually a board-pressed decision. If a CEO is leaving, it's a board-pressed decision, especially if the CEO doesn't hold majority votes anymore. Something about boards that I found out, that there are things called voting power, and not all board members have voting seats. Some board members have multiple voting seats, but sort of as voting power dilutes as you bring on more investors, the board gets more seats and more votes, and then the CEO has less control of the board. And that's usually when you see some CEO turnover, because it's like, okay, now that there's proper checks and balances and proper voting structure, it's probably time to mature the company with a new CEO. That's usually what I see. But if the voting power sits with the CEO and the CEO's posse, like those that have sworn to vote with the CEO either by verbal or written agreement, they hold the majority power over the board. So anyway, Again, if a CEO leaves, there's a T. It's, again, not usually nefarious. It's usually more to do with the maturity of the company and the skill set of the CEO. Reorgs. Companies go through reorganizations for various reasons. I used to see these a ton at Adobe. I feel like once a week I got an email. And it was those emails. It was like Robert now reports to Michael and Michael now reports to Raquel. Like these types of emails. Purposes include improving efficiency, cutting costs, repositioning the business, and dealing with corporate changes such as mergers and acquisitions. Reorgs are almost always because of people. Leaders aren't performing. Some team didn't like some leader. Some people won't report to other people. Some VP needs to report to another SVP to feel like a real boy. Some team isn't performing under a specific person, and so they're going to try another person. Some teams are too expensive and need to merge with another team to suss out who is performing and who is not. So-and-so has beef with another person. A CEO of a recently acquired company won't report to anyone but the CEO, but there can't be two chief product officers, and so there's a reorg. There is not specific T underneath a reorg, I guess, that I couldn't point out. But on the surface, it's about efficiency, repositioning the business, meeting growth targets, transforming the market, et cetera, et cetera. But it almost is underneath the surface, almost always is about people. People drama, people dynamics, who can report to who, who's not doing well under who. This might be relevant for some of you. If you are getting the sense that your company is hitting, quote, the best quarter of the year, but there are still budget cuts. Let's say there's some big company celebration, like a big Series C raise, or hitting a record quarter, or a record month, or a record number of SQLs or MQLs, right? If your company is celebrating big wins, but you still have some tight budgets, and you're still being told that there are layoffs and budget cuts, and there's like stern looks, like, okay, great job, but like, what are you going to do next quarter? It means the company isn't quite hitting the plan. Okay? Companies run on a plan, a financial plan. This is the plan you take to the board and you say, okay, we're going to do this amount of revenue and we're going to spend this much. Are you cool? You cool with that? The plan is very important because these people are investing in your company and need to see and approve the plan. Let's say you're running a lemonade stand and your parents are financially backing this endeavor, okay? You need to go to them and say, okay, you're going to give me $20. I'm going to make $25 and I'm going to spend $10. Is that cool with you? And this is how much you're going to get out of the whole deal. That's the plan. Usually celebrating these big wins, these like big over-the-top quarterly parties, there's cookies and pizza, cold pizza usually, but they don't actually feel like wins means you're not hitting the plan. Usually celebrating these things mean they're trying to keep morale up, but the board is not very happy. Okay? So maybe you hit some great records, but you didn't hit the plan. And now mom and dad that are funding your lemonade stand are unhappy. It's all about the plan. Like, this plan is how fast the company can be to be profitable. And CFOs and CEOs hate adjusting the plan. They do. They hate it. Like, they have to go back to the board and they have to say, okay, we messed up. We were wrong, and I got to adjust the plan. So if you're getting the sense that things are going well, but you're like, not really, it's usually this, that the company actually isn't doing as well as they promised the board they were going to be doing, and now have to come up with weird ways to celebrate wins because they're not winning on a macro level because they're not hitting the plan. Let's say you all of a sudden got an email from leadership or HR that says, if anyone calls in, please direct them to HR or legal. That means someone for sure is looking into the company and writing an investigative journalism piece. Like, this should just be a general rule anyway. Like, don't let an entry-level employee be inadvertently a spokesperson for the company because you didn't tell them they shouldn't talk to Forbes or Fortune or what have you. But the announcement, if you get an email or like a Slack message in general, it usually is driven from something happening. Someone's looking into the company. That's out of budget. Heard this a lot. I delivered this a lot. It's out of budget. Again, back to the plan. Companies go through annual planning to figure out how much they're going to make and how much they're going to spend. And there is something like called an incremental budget ask that's outside of the plan. So there can always be adjustments to the budget, but if your leader says that's out of budget, it means I'm too scared to go to bat for this because it would require an incremental budget ask and you didn't make a good enough case and I'm scared of our CFO. That's what that means. So if you are constantly hearing that's out of budget, I mean, yes, it is out of budget, but there is a possibility to get more budget. You just have to make a better case. It doesn't mean that it's just like hard and fast, like there is no money. It means that you haven't made a good enough case for that person to go to bat for you. If you get told to maybe get some working files from so-and-so, that person's probably getting fired. I had this once at a company where they were like, can you just maybe like get in touch with so-and-so and get some of their working files? I was like, why? Because they were getting let go and we needed to have records and access to their stuff. That's exactly what that was. Data. I love corporate speak around data. I love it. You know, this is a big soapbox for me, data. Data can truly be warped in so many ways. And honestly, not one company I've worked at has had like super accurate data. So it's just so funny. It's like you'll bring up data in a meeting and people will be like, and if people agree with you, they're like, that data looks great. And if people don't agree with you, they'll be like, well, how accurate is the data? Like, data. I find that like the one person in the meeting that says, well, what does the data say? Is for sure that person in a meeting that says, well, to play devil's advocate. You know that person in meetings, like to play devil's advocate. No one's asking you to play devil's advocate. No one needs this input. Please don't. But that person that usually says something like, well, what does the data say? Is using this as a trump card. Everyone is arguing, and yet this knight in shining armor comes in and raises the data flag, and everyone is like, follow that person. They seem to know what they're talking about. Data is wielded as a power dynamic. That's my hot take. If your company is getting new corporate values or like, I don't know, a Taco Tuesday or truly any new initiative after a board meeting, mom and dad are not happy. That's what that means. Something happened in the board meeting and the board is not pleased. And now you got to scramble and put together a Taco Tuesday, right? Like retention is bad. Tons of people are quitting. Revenue isn't great. Hiring is not going well. Your Glassdoor reviews are terrible and it's hurting recruiting. Literally anything that happens right after a board meeting is because something came up in the board meeting. If you get a random meeting in the middle of the day that is less than 15 minutes, you might be getting laid off. This is what happened to me. I was like working and my stupid, naive brain was like, oh, a quick 15 minutes. My manager is so efficient. I was getting laid off. And I should have checked. All of my coworkers' calendars had 10 minutes like before mine and then 15 minutes after mine. Like, I did see on LinkedIn that there was like one very high EQ manager that would put things in meeting invites like, good news, quick 15 minutes or something like that, so that you knew and that your anxious brain didn't have to spiral out of control. But typically, if you're getting a 15-minute or less meeting, it's not good news. Unless your manager says it's good news, it's probably not good news. If your company is getting a new CFO, there's tea. And not necessarily bad tea, okay? But something is happening. I typically see CFOs are like a special CFO. Like there's different flavors of CFO. There's like CFOs that are great at filing for bankruptcy. There are CFOs that are really great for going public. There are CFOs that are really great for tightening up spend, right? If you're getting a new CFO, just kind of take like a second to look at their background and you will get to know what the goals of the company are. Like if you get a new CFO that is like really, really, their background is in like mergers and acquisitions, that's going to be your future. You're either getting acquired or you're acquiring more companies. But you can tell a lot from the type of CFO your company hires. If your CFO has a lot of experience in bankruptcy, that's probably not a good sign, you know? If there is one promotion that is followed by a string of promotions, like let's say you got an email that was like, congratulations to Susan, she's getting promoted to senior vice president of strategy and operations and blah, blah, blah. And then you get the next day or the next week more promotions to SVP. It's because they all complained. 100%. They all complained to the CEO and got a promotion. If your company doesn't have like an overly processed, strict framework for promotions and like there's a string of promotions, it's because someone got promoted and then people felt left out and said something and they all had to get promoted. That's just kind of how startups are. It's the wild, wild west. Let's say you're a new coworker or you're new to a job and your new coworkers, maybe you're at an event or you're at, dinner or drinks after work one day. And your coworker says something like, so how are you liking it? Or how is it so far working with Evan? They have things to say. They have things to say and they're dying to say, but they're trying to figure out if you're cool or not. They're trying to figure out where you stand, but they're just hungry. They're hungry to spill the tea. They're hungry to tell you all the drama. Unfortunately, if there's a new diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, it usually means it's coming from a new executive or a new board member that raises this flag. Unfortunately, I wish I could say this came from an altruistic, original place, that every company just inherently wanted to focus on inclusion and diversity and equity. Usually it's like a new executive coming on board that's like, you don't have any DE&I efforts, we need to change that. Now let's kind of talk through some of these like snippy phrases and what they mean, because I think they're so funny. So the first one is, let's take this offline, right? You hear this once a day. I love this one. I love this one because you know what I think this actually means? How fucking dare you? That's what I think this means whenever someone's like, let's take this offline. There's so much shame and blame in this sentence alone. Like when somebody's like, let's take this offline, it's like, you have spoken completely out of turn. You've said something that is completely irrelevant, and I'm going to shame you for it. I'm going to make you feel terrible for bringing that up in this meeting. That's typically what I think of when someone says, let's take this offline. Let's get on the same page. You are not on the same page, and it's freaking me out. And you are not agreeing with me in a convincing way. Let's think outside of the box. Means your ideas suck. All those things you gave me are not good enough. So we need to, quote, think outside of the box, which is just fancy corporate speak for do better. Try again. Tiger team. I use this one so many times. This one, again, is like a group project. It means there's this big, complicated problem. We don't know how to fix it. Let's just like throw people at it and see what happens. Let's just throw all these brilliant minds at it and hope it goes away and that they don't eat each other alive. Corporate speak is a big reason why work can be so draining. It's a big reason why these interviews have been more draining than I expected, because I haven't used this corporate speak in a very, very long time. And it's so passive aggressive. It's so shaming. And it's why our meetings are longer than they need to be. Corporate speak exists to maintain a facade of professionalism, a facade of intelligence, a facade of experience, of everything is going great, nothing is going wrong, that we're doing something good, that we're part of something worthy. But at the end of the day, it's a facade and it's concealing something. So for me, is a really great way to kind of corporate cleanse. Let's all just try to speak a little more plainly. Let's listen to my therapist. Let's state our needs plainly. Let's speak a little more directly. Let's try not to alienate people who are new to business jargon, because all this business jargon can really be shocking for some new entry-level employees. Let's save us some time and try to remember that we are capable and intelligent human beings working for a company, and we don't have to use words like flywheel to be intelligent and capable. We don't have to use special words to be intelligent. We are intelligent and capable humans. The first place I started was eliminating exclamation points from my communications, which this was hard. Like, if you're looking for a place to kind of try and take out some of the corporate speak, try to eliminate some of your exclamation points. I tried this. I actually had to Slack my team. I Slacked my entire team, like my 30-person team. And I was like, hey, I'm not mad at any of you. I had to just say it because I was like, I'm not using exclamation points anymore because I'm trying to speak more plainly and not use exclamation points. But anyway, let's all try to speak a little more plainly. Try to eliminate some of the corporate speak that has just gotten out of hand as of late. That's all I have for you. I'll see you next week.